Guatemala is an incredible country for coffee, and we've been eager to find a partner there. So, when we heard that the Producer Roaster Forum was being held in Guatemala City, we knew we had to be there. The forum would attract a whole lot of the country's coffee producers, and as sponsors of the event, we were able to show some Field Notes episodes and invite producers to tell us about their farms. And did they ever! We came home with dozens of leads, and over the next few months, our OBIS colleague, Dr. Jorge Ferre, set up calls with all of them. And he narrowed the field down to the 4 most promising candidates. 9 months later, we returned to Guatemala to visit their farms and see if we could find a fit. I have been a coffee drinker all my life, but I didn't know that the coffee industry, as it exists today, is ruining the environment and keeping people trapped in poverty. That is the status quo of coffee. We can't let that stand. We've got to change it. We're traveling the world looking for producers who are doing the right thing for their people, for the planet, and for their communities. When we find them, we connect them to a marketplace of buyers that will pay them the right price, now and for years to come. It's time to put a name, a face, and a place on every cup of coffee. The first farm was Finca Vista al Mar, and Maria Fernanda, or Maffer for short, met us at our hotel for the short drive into the mountains above Guatemala City. As we approached the farm, we met Maffer's mom, Johanna. Along the way, we stopped at the local school where we could feel the strength of Johanna's leadership in the area.
Roberto Pescado.
Se llama Bob Fish, pero la traducción al español es Roberto Pescado.
We got to the farm and were stunned by the setting. Vista al Mar indeed. Maffer presented all of the incredible work she and her mom were doing. They talked about their commitment to the area and to organic farming practices. We all thought, this could be it. Then it was time to walk the fields. As we walked, a couple of men were raking up some dry, dead underbrush, leaving behind bare dirt between the coffee rows. That didn't look right to me. Coffee farmers have to keep control of the weeds and other vegetation that can compete with the coffee. The best practice is to brush the fields periodically. That means someone goes row by row and cuts back the excess vegetation, usually with a machete. This helps the soil retain moisture and maintains habitat for insects and other animals that keep pests in check and support a healthy ecosystem. But brushing takes time, and you have to pay people to do it. These fields look like something else was going on. As the conversation continued, we learned that the Coffee Association for Guatemala, Anacafe, had told Johanna to use glyphosate, the chemical herbicide, to save money on brushing. They told her that the chemical was safe and that it would be consistent with good environmental practices. It is possible, and sometimes even necessary, to use chemicals in the process of farming coffee. But there are 2 major problems with glyphosate and its related herbicides. The first is that they are endemic, meaning that they are absorbed by the root and they continue on into the fruit, the bean, and right into your cup of coffee. You may take your coffee with cream or sugar, but I don't think most of us want it with a known carcinogen. The second problem is what happens to the soil. Soil treated with harsh chemical herbicides dies, effectively becoming dirt. Dirt, which erodes during rainstorms. Dirt, which emits carbon into the atmosphere. Dirt, which requires more and more chemicals in order to produce coffee. Johanna and Maffer were new to coffee farming, and I believe that they genuinely thought that they were doing the right thing for the environment. After all, their own coffee association told them it was fine. The frustrating thing is, in the broader coffee world, that is fine, but we don't think so. Unfortunately, it takes at least 3 years for nature to repair the damage these chemicals do. So, we'll stay in touch with Maffer and Johanna, and maybe we'll be able to form a partnership in the future. But for now, this one is a no. The next day, we were taken by Samuel and Jenny to see a trio of their family farms, another short drive from Guatemala City. The first was a gorgeous ecotourism retreat, and the others were well maintained, but the family seemed to be growing coffee as a side project. We're interested in supporting people who are really using coffee to change the world. This is a wonderful family with some beautiful coffee, and we're sure the eco retreat will not disappoint. But this, too, was not quite what we were looking for. While there is coffee all over Guatemala, there is one part of the country that is truly famous for it: the rugged land and dramatic mountains around the town of Huehuetenango. You can drive there from the capital in 10 hours or so, but the flight is only 45 minutes, so we opted for that. Upon landing, we were met by Edwin and his team from Onyx Coffee. Edwin has roots in Guatemala and has been working in the coffee scene there for years. He would take us to see a number of farms and help us to get to know the coffee world in this part of Guatemala. First up, we stopped for breakfast with a farmer named Aurelio and his family. We tucked in for some great food, and the conversation began in earnest. Aurelio was the only one of his siblings to go to college, but when his father called him back to the farm, he dutifully returned. Aurelio told us that he is committed to this community, and he wants this way of life to continue. Next, we went to see the family warehouse and tasting lab, where an assortment of extended family members came to see what the excitement was all about. Our conversation expanded to the challenges of the coffee world and how the OBIS model addresses them. As we all posed for photos before parting ways, we had a feeling this might be worth a second visit. From there, we drove deep into the stunning mountains just outside of town, climbing into a hidden valley where Edwin had his own small coffee farm. Bob and Edwin hiked the steep fields, huffing and puffing through a discussion of the local challenges. Well, that is until the view completely took their breath away. We visited a few other farms in the valley, and while they were stunning, no one seemed to have that special something we look for in an OBIS partner. Too soon, it was time for Edwin to drive us out of the valley. After a bunch of neighbors helped free our van from a serious mud trap, we were handed off to a new team along the highway. This time from another longtime coffee presence in the area, Primavera, with their representative Hillary as our guide. She took us to meet the incredible team doing really inspiring agronomy training before whisking us up to a high mountaintop to see one of the local lords of coffee. He really acted the part, holding court for us while his family performed a coffee tasting that felt a little too rehearsed. He took our questions, but it felt more like a rote performance than a real conversation. This was not a fit. The next day, Hillary took us to see an Indigenous women's cooperative. But again, we didn't feel a fit. In fact, this felt a bit like a wash, rinse, repeat tour that Hillary and her team do for folks who buy coffee as more of a tourism experience. Unfortunately, that is what passes for farm visits in most of the coffee world. Then it was on to a different cooperative nearby. This one seemed far more engaged, and we really enjoyed the conversation. There was a spark of something interesting here. And that spark got brighter the next morning when we visited their resident agronomic genius. He enthusiastically showed us his worm composting, his apiary, and his clear passion for natural agronomy. We really liked the way this co-op worked together, and it seems like maybe that might be worth exploring later on. As the light turned golden, we returned to the airport in Huehuetenango to find that Hillary, Edwin, and his team we're all on the same flight back to Guatemala City and on home from there. From dozens of prospects at PRF, to 4 strong candidates, to 2 farms that warrant a second visit. Our fingers are crossed that it goes well. I often say that we're looking for a needle in a haystack. And now, I hope you can see what I mean